He is currently one of the two most powerful men in Kyrgyzstan. His leadership has been riddled with corruption and nepotism. His self-serving attitude and short-sighted policies have been criticized for quite a while. This is Sadyr Japarov, the sixth president of Kyrgyzstan. He began his career in politics as a deputy way back in 2005. And since then, his journey has taken significant and unexpected turns, which included sentencing over the kidnapping of public official in 2013. To avoid being jailed, he had to flee to another country. For 4 years, he had to keep a low profile and stay under the radar. But in 2017, he did attempt to come back. It didn't really go well, and he still ended up being detained at the border. Sentenced to 11 years and 6 months, Japarov became a kind of victim of political oppression. He even attempted to take his own life.
Как вы себя чувствуете? Ваше состояние здоровья? Чтобы мы уже люди успокоили. Пожалуйста, да? Можете сказать?
Менің ахуалым жақсы, нормальмен отырам. Екі охранник қайтарып отырады. Бары жақсы.
Что произошло? Почему вы решились вот на этот шаг?
В шоковом состоянии, я не помню ничего.
And yet, 4 years later, he is one of the most powerful figures in Kyrgyzstan.
The nationalist politician Sadyr Japarov has won by a landslide in Kyrgyzstan's snap presidential election, one triggered by the collapse of the previous government.
So how does one go from being a prisoner to a leader of an entire country? There are few examples throughout history of individuals who have gone from prisoners to presidents, but overall it's quite a rare occasion. One famous example is Nelson Mandela, imprisoned for 27 years for his opposition to South Africa's apartheid regime. He later went on to become the country's first black president in 1994. Lula da Silva, current president of Brazil, was also once imprisoned on corruption charges in 2018. Released in 2019, he returned to governing once again. Donald Trump is another controversial case. Currently facing 91 felony charges, it's unclear what incoming 2024 presidential elections will look like for Trump. Technically, he can still run even if he is convicted. The Constitution simply says the president must be at least 35 years old, a natural-born citizen, and 14-year resident of the US. Meaning it does not prohibit people with criminal records to run for presidency. The other question is, what if he wins? Could he be elected from prison? And can a prisoner rule an entire country? A phenomenon that has not happened yet in the US has already been in use here in Kyrgyzstan. Let's look over on how this happened, and is it really that bad to have someone with that kind of past in power? To know the whole story, we have to go way back to 2012. Different protests were happening against one of the largest gold mines in Central Asia, the Kumtor mine. Ranked at various times as the world's 5th largest and 7th largest gold mine, Kumtor was run by Centerra Gold, a Canadian-based mining company, which many, to put it mildly, were not too fond of. Accused of different environmental and human rights violations, Centerra represented the ugly face of neocolonialism here in Kyrgyzstan.
For 30 years, a major industrial operation has scarred the land and been at the center of serious industrial accidents. Earlier this year, following decades of public protest,
protesters against Kumtor demanded one main thing: gold mines nationalization, which Sadyr Japarov has been advocating for years.
Kumtor'un altını gününe 125 kilogram altından sutkasına altın alatta oşol жерден. Есептеп көрсөң 2 миллионга жакын доллар. Анын баары каяка кетип атат?
Shortly, he becomes one of the main figures in the rallies that start to happen in Kyrgyzstan. And he quickly gets to represent the leaders of then opposition.
Kumtor boyunca bütünlüğü Respublika уже bildi. Kumtor ne olup atkany bildi da.
Эгер биз камалып калбаганда мынчалык деңгээлде билмек эмес экен.
The violent and angry clashes do not go to waste. Not to spoil anything beforehand, but Kumtor does become nationalized in 2022 under the Japarov's ruling.
Эч болгончо кеч болсун демекчи, акыры Кумтөр элге кайтарылды, мамлекеттин ээлигине өттү.
Leaving Centera Gold subsidiaries to declare bankruptcy. Throughout all the riots that have happened in the past, Japarov was sentenced several times. One is for the attempt to kidnap the Akim, Emilbek Kaptagayev. Akim, what we call here in Kyrgyzstan, is the head of local regional administration. Kyrgyz authorities then accused Japarov of being behind this heinous plan. While all the participants in the riots were apprehended, Japarov fled the country and lived in Cyprus, denying any involvement in the riots. But in 2017, in an attempt to come back, he was still detained at the border on the kidnapping charges. During his entire sentence in prison, his wife and other few supporters held rallies, describing the charges against him as politically motivated. Now that we found out why he is in prison, let's figure out how he was released. This one might be quite a tricky question, because for years it has not been still openly discussed in public. Only some kind of gossiping and allegations going around. But here's what has happened in fact. It's 2020, the year of COVID and social isolation. But for the Kyrgyz people, there was an additional event that made the year rather memorable. The 2020 Kyrgyz Revolution. In the middle of ongoing revolt, Japarov was released from prison by his supporters and other participants in protests. Due to his popular appeal he has built over the years in prison, he managed to create a good following.
Sadyr Japarov'un taxtıga gelişin tilenişimiz gerek. Mına men артымда турган
But it's arguable if his supporters were enough to free him. Right after the release, the High Court appointed him in hasty trial as the interim prime minister, as the ex-president Jeenbekov was facing resignation. A few months later, he is running for the presidential elections and wins. There were accusations of his sudden rise being linked to organized crime. Japarov obviously rejected any of those suggestions. A big lover of fancy stuff and luxury, Sadyr Japarov often makes headlines for purchasing different business jets and expensive clothing. It's not like Kyrgyzstan is one of the top economic powerhouses, but if his position allows him to make such big expenses, then sure, why not?
There are physical personalities, social personalities, and spiritual personalities. So what's the meaning behind his love of luxury? In the case of this person, his physical personality is the most important. And that's what he invests in to make an impression. Why does he openly show off the luxury he lives in when the economy is bad? To make an impression, so that people will respect him. Because, I repeat, he is stuck in his physical personality.
The same media outlets that were once actively informing the public about his trial back in 2017 are now his biggest enemies. The moment he landed his place on the presidential throne, he immediately started targeting independent media.
Kyrgyzstan rights defender and journalist Balat Temirov illegally deported from Kyrgyzstan.
He hates to be criticized because he's afraid. He's a coward. He's a broken human being. He's afraid his bosses won't like something. He acts like a terrified husband. When a husband starts to be afraid of getting caught in an affair because all of his properties are in his wife's name. And he's scared he'll be kicked out. That's how he acts. He's scared that when criticized, his bosses will doubt him. You're being criticized a little too much. You're not in control of the situation.
Nepotism can be a joke when mentioned around friends and may be taken lightly when it's some kind of family business matters. But it is very dicey and serious issue when it comes to literally ruling a country. Numerous investigations have been done on him and his close relatives. But the way he addresses those issues raises skepticism around his words. Always running away from clear answers and blaming third parties, Sadyr Japarov makes it clear that after all, there is a reason to be distrustful of some of his actions.
Erteң emne olup keтерин siz dagы biz dagы bilbeybiz. Bir Kuday özü bilet. Beylik, sayasatçılar bugün bar erteң жок. Mına kança debegen sayasatçılar ötkөн bizdin Kırgızstanda. Aldık ayakta жүргөнүн өзүңөр билесиңер.